Audio Jungle. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon on card, mobile, and more, modernizing your laundromat's payment experience. So a couple things before we get started. The webinar is being recorded and it will be shared on our YouTube channel. So if you have to step away or you want to rewatch it, it will be available to you. Questions. So just go ahead throughout the presentation and put your questions in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer those as they come in. There'll also be some time at the end. I would like to thank Sense for sponsoring this webinar. And I want to introduce our presenter today, Eric, I think it's Nemez, but
Yeah.
did I say that right?
Yep. Yeah, you got it, which is good.
Excellent. And I am going to turn over presenter mode to you, and you can get us started.
Perfect. All right. Is my screen showing correctly? Perfect.
Yep. You're all good.
Awesome. So first off, welcome everyone. I appreciate you being here today. And thank you to the CLA for giving me this opportunity. I know your guys' time is valuable, and I think, that's something we'll touch on with payment systems. But my name's Eric Nemes. I'm the director of hardware sales at Sense and Laundroworks. I've been with the company for a little bit over 2 years now, and really my day-to-day consists of working directly with laundromat owners and distributors, discussing payment systems and really what makes sense, the most sense in a given situation. The question I generally start with in any of those conversations is why now? Operators have run successful stores with quarters for decades. Why are they looking to make the investment now? And hopefully that's what we'll answer for everyone today. I'll also, set the tone up front. This isn't going to be a sales pitch. I'm not here to push you towards any single product or solution. Hopefully just give you honest feedback on all of your options. So whatever decision you do make, you can make it with confidence. Next slide. And a little bit more about myself before we dive in today, just so you can understand where I might be able to add value. First off, I do represent multiple options, and I think that's important to point out because there really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. I think there are some that work for a higher percentage of operators than others, but the reality is every store is unique, and it's important that you as owners or potential investors understand what options are available to you today. I can also say with a good amount of confidence that there's probably not a lot of people that have sold more payment systems than me in the last 2 years. I've also been to, over 100 plus industry events, whether it's distributor shows in their warehouses, the Clean Show, or events like Excellence coming up. So between those events, doing demos in my office or visiting stores, I've spoken to hundreds, if not thousands of laundromat owners that have, taken the investment, made the leap into a payment system. I've also spoken to plenty of operators who haven't made the switch, and they'll give me 100 reasons why systems don't work, even though they've never tried one. But I've never had a conversation with an operator who made the investment and had them tell me they regretted it. If anything, they wish they did it sooner. So for you, hopefully this isn't just, theoretical advice that I'm talking about, but everything that I share today is really grounded in what I've actually seen work. A little bit of the agenda for the next 30 minutes or so. So we'll start with, why, payment systems continue to increase in the market, what the payment system landscape looks like and what options are available to you today, how to, really evaluate if it's the right decision for you now, the pros and cons and the trade-offs of the different options that you have. We'll talk about, if you do make the decision to make that investment, how to transition smoothly. Then we'll spend some meaningful time talking about loyalty programs, because I do think at the end of the day, that's really what represents the longest term opportunity. And then, I'm happy to keep it conversational. So we'll try to answer questions as we go through the slides, but we'll make sure we get to all of the questions at the end as well. So Do you want to start a little bit with the big picture and why this conversation is happening now? And I think a big part of it is, stepping outside of laundromats for a second, consumer behavior has changed. And if you think about, the last time myself or really anyone on this call or anyone listening, like really when's the last time you've used quarters outside of a laundromat? And for the most people, it's been a while. Most customers, we're living in a world where whether it's coffee, groceries, paying for parking, whatever it may be, they're accustomed to using their phone or their own personal card. But what's interesting is when you look at a laundromat or the laundromat industry, it's only about 35 to 40% of stores are accepting credit and debit cards today. And I think that number surprises a lot of people because it means the majority are still using coin only. And I think, one, coins work, they've worked for a while, but that also represents an opportunity to gain a competitive advantage over most of the market by investing in a system. Some other things that we've seen are that in general, when you've invested in a payment system, usually by month 12, you are seeing a revenue increase of about 17%. So there is real meaningful impact, and we'll touch on some of the mechanisms that play there. And then, in the conversations that I have on a day-to-day basis, most people I talk to are either have multiple stores or they want to own more stores. And what we've seen is, the growth of multi-store ownership over the past decade. The number of operators that own 4 or more stores has increased by 7%. And a meaningful part of that growth is really operators being driven by technology, leveraging it really to make their businesses more profitable, but also more scalable as well. Cool. So again, getting back to the why invest in a payment system? So we'll get into specifically what you're actually buying when you make that decision, because it's not necessarily just a new way to collect money, but for me, it's 3 main things. The first is you want to look at maximizing your revenue. And like I said, there are a few mechanisms at play that contribute to that, but I think the big one is being able to retain your recurring customers with different loyalty incentives, which we'll touch on as we go through this webinar. The second is going to be reducing your operating burden. What is the value of your time? What are the things tying you to your store that could be offloaded with technology? Where else could you be, whether it's spending time with your family, working on your business, going on vacation? The reality is legacy systems like quarters require time that I think technology can give you back. And the third is you want to make your customers happy. Not only is it making the process and the in-store experience easier, but you want to be able to reward them based on their usage. When you're putting $10 into a change machine, your customer is getting 40 quarters. There's no ability to turn that $10 into 12. But a lot of the payment systems we talk about today really allow you to build that loyalty and incentivize your customers based on their usage. Any questions so far, Danielle, or continue to go? Cool. So I do want to talk about the actual options, and there are some vendors out there that have, some nuances that I won't cover today, but by and large, what we're looking at here on the screen covers the vast majority of the options that you have. Coin, like I said, still the most common, still works really well, but it's going to have the most limitations. Loyalty cards, this is where you have a centralized kiosk where customers load value onto a physical card, and they can use that card at your washers and dryers. Think of it like a store-specific gift card. This is really the model that I personally believe in seeing that offers the most upside from a loyalty and retainment perspective. Credit and debit directly at the machine. So each individual washer and dryer will have a card reader. Customers can swipe, tap, insert, or use a mobile wallet at those devices. And you can use it with or without a kiosk if you want a loyalty option. Mobile pay and QR codes that kind of fit in the same mold. And there's a few different flavors of mobile payments. It could be a dedicated app for your store. It could be simply using Apple Pay or Google Pay directly at the reader. And their QR code would be where you're scanning a QR code and it's opening up either a web browser with a loyalty account or a dedicated app for that specific system. And hybrid is really any of those combinations with coin as well. And I point out with coin versus with cash, because I think with any system, you want to have some form of cash. Even loyalty card, where you might eliminate quarters, you're still accepting cash at the kiosk. So I think that's important to point out, is there's no, and there shouldn't really be any cashless laundromats, but the way you accept it is certainly changing, for what I think the better, and hopefully making it easier for more owners. So I do think it's helpful to touch on the end customer experience, because again, on that why slide, that's one of the North Stars you have as a business owner, is how do I make it easier and how do I create a better experience for my customers? So with coin, it's pretty straightforward. Your customers are walking in, going to the change machine, exchanging their bills for quarters, and then going over to the machine and paying whatever the amount of that load is. It works. People know how to do it, but there's really no loyalty mechanism with it, and you're not gaining any data on who your customers are. There is a small minority of people that still, keep quarters at their home and come in with that. But again, in the most of the conversations I have, the vast majority of their customers are coming in with dollar bills and exchanging them at the change machine. Then you have your loyalty card system, where the customer comes in, goes to the kiosk, and they can load money onto their card, generally with cash, credit or debit, or their mobile wallet. And there are some systems that accept EBT as well, and that's EBT cash. They're then using that card to start every machine. Most loyalty card providers also offer an app option as well. So over time, customers can use either their loyalty card or their phone, which they carry everywhere. And this is really the model that's going to generate the most amount of customer data and also have the highest adoption rate. Credit and debit at the machine, you can argue, is the most frictionless experience, because it mirrors what people are doing, at other retail establishments in their day-to-day life. They walk up, they tap their card, they swipe it, they insert it at the machine. No kiosk, no app, no learning curve. The trade-off with that is you are losing customer data, because a transaction happened, but you're not going to necessarily know who did it. And then, like I said, mobile pay, app, QR code, all kind of fit in the same vein. And that's going to be, a customer using their phone, whether it be using a dedicated app, using their mobile wallet, or if they're scanning a QR code directly at the machine. All are great low-cost options. But I'll touch on, where adoption rate might be lower with some of those, just because of the option of still having coin in most of those setups, if mobile is the primary alternative to coin. So yeah, spending a little bit more time on, the pros and cons and trade-offs of each system, because I think this is where operators can really make or break the decision on their investment. So starting with loyalty cards, there's a lot of pros to them. You can eliminate coins entirely while still accepting cash at the kiosk. And again, cash really is important to all demographics. So whatever system you go with, you want to have some form of that, just depending on where they're loading it. But with the loyalty card system, each card's going to have a unique identifier. Customers are able to tie their personal information to it. So you're getting real customer data, you're getting visit frequency, how much they're spending. And generally, adoption rate is really high, because you're forcing everyone to go through a centralized system. But there are drawbacks to it as well. You do need to maintain card inventory. Customers are loading a card, even though it's generally reloadable, they lose it, they move, they don't know what they did with it. So you're getting new customers, but your existing ones are using up your current stock. You generally order a year at a time, but it's still something you need to keep track of. And then there's going to be some customer education required in terms of how the actual process works. So you're going to want to be spending time in the store when you first roll it out, which we'll touch on with the transition. Credit and debit, again, it's probably going to be the easiest experience for your customers, because it's very intuitive for them to take out their own personal debit or credit card and use it at a credit card machine. So you can really introduce it with little instruction. You don't need to dedicate a lot of time to planning for it. But again, one of the drawbacks being understanding who your customers are. somebody use the machine, you know what your revenue is, but you don't know who that actual customer is, or if they've left, or if there's been a drop off. And there's an element of connectivity with each reader needing to be connected to the internet. The reality is Wi-Fi is a pretty proven product at this point, but issues can happen. So generally, if you're going with credit or debit at the machine, you're going to be keeping coin as so that you have that redundant option. And then mobile and QR code. I think these are somewhat undervalued in terms of being a supplementary option to loyalty card or credit or debit, but I think they're also overestimated for being the primary alternative to coins. The cost is low. You don't need a ton of equipment. Again, it could just be, a card reader or a QR code on the machine. But just in my experience, what I've seen is adoption rate can be lower than, again, credit or debit or loyalty. You have to be there to educate your customers, help them understand how they download the app, what steps they need to go through to create an account. So generally, why it's a good low cost option. Adoption rate has been lower than I think what a lot of people expect, and there's a customer education element to it as well. And then with hybrid systems, this is what's going to really allow you to accept the maximum forms of payment. So it could be everything above that I just mentioned. So you're not really forcing anyone to change. But again, if you're investing in a system and keeping that legacy system, keeping the legacy system, you're still kind of maintaining any of the old burden that you've had. So that's why I think it's important to consider maximizing revenue and the time you're getting back in the same vein, because both are going to be important in terms of how you make your decision when you're making this investment. And then, want to touch a little bit on things you should consider before you decide if you want to make the switch. I think question one that I just spoke about a little bit is, what is your operating burden right now? I think it's important to really sit down and figure out how many hours, each day, week, month, you and your employees are spending doing tasks related to your existing system. And then you can, assign a value to what that time is. And you can really understand, all right, I'm doing all of these things that's tying me to my store, and it's probably costing me, X amount of my time. Is there a way to take that off my plate by investing in technology? The second question you want to look at is, what's the competitive landscape around you? Do you want to be the change in your market if everyone's using quarters, and you can create that opportunity for yourself with really thoughtful loyalty programs? Or I was at a distributor show speaking to someone in Maine, and they didn't have a laundromat around them for an hour, and they own the convenience store next door. And they're like, I don't have to worry about losing customers. I'm already at the store collecting quarters. Like, it doesn't really make sense for me to do it. That might be the case for you as well. So you want to understand, what are you gaining or losing with this investment, and how is it going to impact how your customers make the decisions with the laundromats they have available to them. Third thing to consider is your equipment. The good news, I think most modern systems work with pretty much every commercially available washer or dryer. But if you're considering doing a retool in the next year or two, it might not be worth making the investment now. Generally, you can take, a reader that you have on an existing machine and move it to a newer one, but there may be things like new harnesses or new control boards or new mounting brackets that you need for that newer equipment that's going to have a cost associated with it. So it's really just worth considering, like, hey, if I'm going to make this change for new equipment soon, maybe I do everything at once. And then the last question is, how were your customer reaction, and then what you want to do about it. The technology part's easy, but I think how much effort you're willing to put into customer education during the transition is really important. You want to help your regular customers understand and adopt the benefits of the new system. So it does require personal involvement, especially in the first few weeks. So if you're not willing to be present during that initial period, maybe it's not the right time for you to make this change. So now we're at the point you've kind of decided you want to consider some options. How do you decide who to move forward with? And I think choosing the right vendor is really important, because not all systems are equal. Not all vendors will be a good fit depending on what your situation is. So, how I would look at it is, first, be open to every option. I think a vendor who only sells one specific thing might try to do somewhat of a square peg round hole situation if that's the only option that they have. So I think the best partners are going to be the ones that truly understand, what's your current state with the laundromat? What's your ideal state? What do you want your relationship to be? What are the challenges getting in the way of that? And then what system is going to have the most impact on those challenges? It may be a really small store where mobile only makes sense. It may be a small store where you want to eliminate quarters. I think you want to be able to have an open discussion and consider all options in front of you, whether it be with one vendor or talking to multiple and figuring out which one's the right fit. The second is do your research. We live in a world where information is everywhere. The Facebook groups, for better or worse, are very active for laundromats, and you're going to get a lot of information from existing customers, people who already have the systems. There's more and more videos on YouTube with people talking about their experience, and then industry events are great. I think what's great about laundromat industry in general is you actually don't, in theory, have that much competition. So if someone's a couple hours away from you, they're going to be willing to share their ideas, share their experience. So I think putting yourself out there, being part of that community, it can be really helpful in deciding what direction you want to go in. Third, who's your customer, who's your ICP, who's your ideal customer, who do you actually want to be catering towards? We'll touch on this stat a little bit more later, but the reality is about 30 to 40% of a laundromat's customers make up 95% of their self-serve revenue. So that means over half your customers make up pretty much all of your revenue. So how do you identify who those customers are? How do you reward them? But then how do you go acquire more customers that look like them as well? And having the ability to do that, I think, is an important consideration in this thought process. And lastly, what is the impact you're looking for? Going back to what are your goals? What are you hoping to achieve? Do you want to buy more stores? Do you want to just get some time back? Do you want to strictly make more money? So you want to offer all options available? Those are things you want to think about and understand, what is the end goal with all of this? Because that's also going to play a big role in what system you should go with. So we've now gotten to the point you've made a decision, you're confident in it. How do you actually execute on this without creating chaos in your store? Because I've seen operators do it really well. I've seen it done poorly. And I think a big part of that comes down to the preparation. So I kind of see the transition in 3 phases. First one being preparation. And I think it generally deserves more time than most operators give it. Before you go live, you want to make sure you have customer facing signage that's really clear and simple. Most people aren't going to read a full paragraph. They're going to glance at something for 2 seconds. If you have that captive audience for 2 seconds, what's the message you want to get across? You want to be thoughtful with that. You also want to make sure your staff can confidently walk a customer through the new system from start to finish. Actually, role play it, test it, try to break it, find things that can go wrong. Because if you have a customer walk in and your staff isn't confident in how it works, they're in turn not going to be confident as well. You also want to learn the back end. You want to know, what your reports look like. You want to know how you can provide customer service, whether it's refunds, adding balance to cards, understanding the basic troubleshooting. And that leads into, you want to understand what the support process is with your vendor as well. You don't need to be a technician, but you want to be competent and understand if something goes wrong, what are the steps you need to take to fix it. At that point, we're getting to launch date. And I think obviously this is going to be the most critical window because this is really when customers are coming in and using your system. So you want to make sure you're at your store. You want to make sure not just on launch day, but for the first few weeks so you can be present and answer questions that people have and help them understand what the benefits are. But you also want to run, aggressive loyalty programs as well. Give people a reason to try out the new system, whether it's, a free wash or credits for when they sign up, or we see a really popular one is a dollar for dollar match. So double your money. You really want to take a long-term view of what impact that initial bonus is going to have, because ultimately the money that you give away or spend those first 2 to 3 weeks are only going to create dividends in the long run, because you want to create a sticky process that gets customers coming back on a recurring basis. You also want to just be patient with your customers that are resistant. There's people that have been using quarters forever at your store. It's going to be an uncomfortable change for them. Maybe for those ones, you just give them a card with money on it so they can go through the experience and understand how it works. But acknowledge that it's change, help them understand why it's better in the long run, and don't make them feel bad for being confused. And then lastly, optimization. So I think this is really where technology creates a differentiator for you, because you can now start reviewing your data. When your peak usage is, which machines are running most, what your average transaction value is, and how often your customers are coming in. And then you can use that data to, make decisions that these systems offer you, whether it's adjusting the bonuses, doing happy hour pricing, targeting customers that haven't come back in a certain time frame. A technology system is going to give you that ability based on, how much information it allows you to capture for your customers specifically. Additionally, I think it's important to consider, how you're communicating these benefits to your customers. So I touched on this a little bit, but signage, I can't stress enough. Just keep it simple. It doesn't need to be 3 sentences. If you need to explain it in 3 sentences, you probably don't understand it enough. So be thoughtful with how you communicate that to your customer. Staff communication obviously is going to be a big lever as well. You want your employees confident and friendly and very helpful in the sense of it shouldn't, they should, if someone walks in and you accept debit and credit at the kiosk, if someone asks, do you accept debit or credit cards, the answer shouldn't be like, well, not at the machine, but we do at the kiosk. It should just be, yes, we do it at the kiosk. So you want them to really understand the process and what's going to delight the customer with that initial interaction. You also want to plan for edge cases. If you decide to eliminate coins, what do you do if someone walks in with a bag of quarters? So, maybe it's you have cash on hand that you can exchange. Maybe you just take the quarters and load value. Maybe you take the quarters and start machines for them. But you want to understand, the system might not cater to everyone. What are the edge cases that you can prepare for to help convert those customers over to using your system? Yeah, and as we, kind of get towards the end of it, I do want to spend, some real time on this section around float and data and repeat visits, because I do think this is really where a modern payment system is going to shine and be really useful for you. A system in and of itself is great, but a system where you can run a really thought out loyalty program is going to set you up for years of success. So I've broken it down really into 3 sections around float, data, and then driving repeat visits. So with float, this is really a concept that some our newer investors might not be familiar with, but generally how it works with a loyalty system, whether it's at the kiosk or through a mobile app or through a QR code, is the customer's loading money onto their loyalty account before they actually use any services. So they're giving you their money first. They're basically paying up front for future services. And any balance that sits unspent over time is technically your float. So if I were to walk in and I load $20, but I only use 10 of it in that particular visit, you as the owner have collected that $20. I still have $10 left on my card. That's a great reason for me to continue to come back to the store. Some of it may go unspent, and that's something that you accrue over time as an owner. Generally, when we look at, a store's revenue over a yearly basis and how much is left over on float, it's usually around 10%. So if your revenue is $100,000 at the end of the year, you're going to have about $10,000 of credits left over in loyalty accounts. Some of that will be used, which is great because that creates the stickiness. That's what gets people coming back. But some of it will be, unused as well. And, eventually you can take that off your books and that becomes real revenue for you. A couple of things that we've seen float help contribute into is just the number of recurring customers that you get over that first year. Generally, it's about 15 to 20% increase in recurring customers. And we define that as someone that comes in more than once a month. And that's because through the programs, through paying you up front, through incentivizing them, you're creating stickiness that gets them to continue to come back to your store rather than choosing a competitor. So between the float and that increase in recurring customers and that increase in revenue, we generally see the average payback period on the system is about 18 months. And that's a number we're really confident in. Getting more into the data. A big part of what a payment system is going to do for you is allow you to understand what's going on in your store in real time. So you can see which machines are running and when they're running. You can see, if the washers at the front are used more than the ones at the back, how busy you are each hour, day, week, month. And then you can start to make decisions based off that behavior to change the way your customers are interacting in your store, whether it's happy hour pricing. If you notice the average load value is a little bit lower with credit or debit or with cash, or however you want to look at it, you can run certain bonuses to try to drive the spend up based on what your customers are doing. It's also going to enable you to understand who are, the customers that come in every week, who are the ones that are loading more money, how are they loading money, and can you start to reward them as well? Additionally, you can start to see if, I had customers that were coming in, like clockwork every Tuesday, and 3 months have gone by and I haven't seen them. You're going to know who they are. You're going to have mechanisms to reach out and retain them and bring them back, whether it be with promo codes or emails or texts or direct mailers, whatever it may be. So it does allow you to run a more sophisticated business because you can understand and see the customers you have, the customers you lost, and how to get them back as well. And then repeat visits. I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, but I think this is really the main goal is you want to be getting customers that come in more than once a month, because they're going to be the ones that contribute to your revenue in the most meaningful way. A minority of your customers are going to drive almost all of your business, really. So your job, and really any loyalty program's job, is to identify these customers, make them feel valued, and give them a reason to keep choosing your store over the competition. I think everything else in your business becomes a lot easier when you do this well. Marketing becomes easier because you know who you want to target. Pricing decisions become easier because you understand, what your customers are willing to pay based off their behaviors. And even if you're doing a retool, equipment decisions get easier because which are they going to 45 pounders or 60s or 20s, or is it in the front or the back? It allows you to make future decisions because you know exactly what that behavior in your store is that's driving the most meaningful impact for you. So I think that's a big thing, is being able to identify, reward, and retain your best customers. That's really what a payment system should do. And that's really an important thing to consider. So getting back kind of to the fundamentals of the why you invest in a payment system. At this point, if you make this investment thoughtfully, if you choose the right system, you execute the transition well, and you're using data, you should expect to make more money. You're going to have higher spend per visit. You're going to have more pricing flexibility by giving them different options to pay you, and you're going to be able to identify, reward, and retain your best customers. You're also going to have more time. So what is the value of getting an extra hour or two back each week? Or maybe if you're a multi-store owner, that could be 10 hours back each week. And you're going to have happier customers. They're going to have a better experience, and they're genuinely being rewarded for their behaviors. And really, these aren't promises. These are what operators are seeing by investing in a system. When I go to these shows, when I talk to someone 6 months after they make a decision, they tell me they make more money and they've gotten their life back and their customers love the system. So that should really be your expectation when you make this investment, of achieving these three things here. So before I, open it up to questions, I kind of want to just recap, an action plan for you today. So I think the first thing is, be honest with yourself about whether your store or you are ready to make this investment. And it's not just financially, but operationally as well. Do you have the bandwidth to execute a good strategy to make this transition? Do your research. Don't make a decision today, based on anything I talked about today, but talk to other owners, go to the forums that I mentioned, go to YouTube, go to different events, and just make sure that you're getting real world experience as well. I'd consult your distributor. At the end of the day, I live in Boston, but these distributors are on the streets every single day. They're visiting stores. They've built stores. They know your market better than I ever will. So if you have a distributor, consult with them. If you don't have one, happy to make a connection, but use them as a resource. Again, I touched on networking, but the laundromat community, I think what makes it really stand out to me, having worked in other industries, is it's a lot of really normal people that want to see other people succeed, and they're going to be willing to share their experiences with you. So they either, make the right decisions that they made, or you can avoid any of the mistakes they made as well. And ultimately, I'm happy to be a resource. So you have my email there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I think my phone number is on one of the slides here at the end. I think the next one. There it is. So, don't be a stranger. If you have other questions, if you disagreed or agreed with anything I said and want to have an open conversation about it, I'm happy to be a resource.
Right. Well, thank you, Eric. That was very informative. Now, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and add those into the chat for Eric to answer. While people maybe are putting their thoughts together.
Yep.
One question about float.
Mm-hmm.
So if I understand correctly, I understand what float is, but I believe if someone were at some point to sell their store, don't you have to account for that float in the sale of the store?
Yeah, there's again, I always say consult an accountant or someone who knows more money about me. But I think the general best practice that I've seen, and whether it be on Facebook or talking to people who have done it, is they'll take their last year and divide it by half, and that's generally what they would contribute as real revenue that they would give back or include in the sale. But yeah, it's everyone handles it a little bit differently. So that's the best practice that I've seen, but I think always consult, an accountant on that just to make sure you're doing the correct thing as well.
Thank you. So we do have a question related to cost, the cost of the kiosk and each reader for the machine. I don't know if you have a base cost or general cost or.
Yeah, it's going to vary by provider. I would say it could be anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000 per kiosk, depending on what payment methods you want to accept and which vendor you go with. I think most vendors or all of them also, we sell our systems through distributors. So if you have a distributor that you work with and you want to get a full detailed quote, we're happy to share pricing specifically on our products if you want to reach out to me directly. But I think your distributors also, they'll have all the price books. So that'll give them the best comparison.
Someone is asking if there's a cost for the loyalty card for the customer, and if yes, what options can they offer for tourists who are visiting one time?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of up to the owner. So at least with our system, you can either give it away for free. You can charge, if it costs you $1, you can charge $1 to offset it. There's the ability to replace cards if you lose it, so you might charge a fee for that. But it's really up to the operator themselves. I'll say best practice. I see it done in one of two ways. They either give the first card away for free to eliminate friction, and that's what I would do whenever you roll the system out. And then they might charge $2 for the replacement, or they charge $1 for a new card and $1 for a replacement just to offset it. I would say if I had to put a number on it, 90% of the customers we have operate in one of those two ways. The option for tourists is an interesting one. And the way, again, feedback that I've gotten in talking to owners, like, again, I live in Boston, Cape Cod is close to me, and it's a big tourist destination. We have quite a few stores down there. And what they've realized is the biggest thing tourists don't want is to actually get quarters. Like, they don't want to, put in money at the change machine and have these extra quarters that they're not going to use. So more important to them is going to be the convenience. So we found that it's not, whether you want to call it a great option or not, but like they're willing to maybe leave $1 or $2 just to have the convenience of using their credit or debit card and starting the laundry. And the reality is most tourists, if they walk into a laundromat, they're not going to leave because the payment options are great. Like they're on vacation, like they're not going to drive around all day just to find the right one. And a lot of them are like, well, I might come back next year. So now I have this money that I can use again. And they probably won't, but I think a lot of people justify it that way.
Yeah. Or give it to a resident that
Yeah, or they can
you
just
know there or
yeah, they can just give it back to the owner, or a lot of times they'll see someone else doing laundry and be like, "Hey, I left $2 on this. Like, here you go." And then there's ways to merge that balance as well. So I would say
yeah.
that you're gonna see that reaction more than people leaving your store because you didn't have a different one.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, Next question is this company or this laundromat, they just discovered that LaundryWorks and Sense are now one entity. They said they cannot access Sense in Canada, but they do have LaundryWorks. I don't know if you could address the likelihood of Sense coming to Canada.
I would say the likelihood is high. The timeline, I have no idea. I think Lux Laundry. I can, look up your account and reach out to you and answer more questions around that. It's kind of an inevitable thing, but it's just prioritizing at this point. So I don't have a great answer on when that'll happen.
Lux has another question. So using a credit card, can you put any denomination on the loyalty card?
Yeah. So with their selecting credit as the option to make a payment, you can have preset amounts. So, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then there's also a custom option. But it's important for that custom option. The lowest preset amount is going to be the minimum. So if you say $10 is the lowest preset and they try to load 9, it won't let them. So you could do like dollar as the lowest preset, and then they can load whatever they want down to the penny.
Great. Sorry. One for infrastructure to install the loyalty card kiosk and devices on a machine. Do they need Wi-Fi at a certain speed?
Well, yeah, I want to say that's like 10 megabits per second. It's minimal because your each kiosk is hardwired into a router or modem. So the kiosk itself, like, again, every system's a little bit different, but speaking from my experience, you're connecting the kiosk to the router or modem with an Ethernet cable. So it's pretty minimal internet speed required. And then again, some systems you'll have to connect the readers to that same internet, and then others, the readers will be wireless and don't need internet.
Right. Give it just a minute to see if anybody has any last question. We had some good questions.
Yeah.
Um, oh. Uh, can they use the loyalty cards to access vending machines, doors, like,
Yep. Yeah.
restrooms, I assume, like things like that?
Yep. Yeah. Our loyalty card readers, any vending machine, and then you can use them for bathroom door access or, office or, electrical doors as well. And there's a variety of different, permission settings that you can, whether it's based off last use or management card only. But yep, door access and vending machines generally work with, again, our system, and I would imagine others as well.
Okay, that's good. Um, Okay, I'm not seeing anything else. I'm gonna share just a couple upcoming events. If while I'm doing that, you have one last question, again, feel free to add it. But in our last couple minutes, just want to share a few events that we have coming up. So um, CLA hosts what we call CLA Connect Live events, and they are smaller dinner networking events that we do in different locations across the country. And they're just meant for smaller groups under 50, somewhere 20 to 50 people to just meet, get together, talk business, and have dinner together. So we have one coming up actually tomorrow night in Burlington, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. Eric, I don't know if you're attending. I will be there.
There will Nick will be there, so there will be sense representation.
Okay, good. And then here's the next few coming up in June, this summer, basically. Newark, California is Northern California. Rosemont, Illinois is near O'Hare Airport. And then Richfield, Ohio is between Akron and Cincinnati. But if you go to this link down here, you'll see the events for the rest of the year. So in addition to our virtual events like today and the Connect Live smaller events, we also do larger national events. We do a few a year. The one that is coming up, which Eric referenced a little bit, is our Excellence in Laundry event. It will be May 5th through the 7th in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. We start with an evening reception on the 5th and then 2 full days of education. We have some great speakers, great content. We have sold out exhibitors. So Sense will have a nice big booth there, along with, I believe we have 35 different companies that will be there that you can learn about the different products, services, things that they're doing. And all of this is at a very, very nice, beautiful resort right on the beach. So we still are accepting registrations. So if you go to this link, you can see the agenda, the speakers, the costs, everything. But there still is time. We still get people right up until the last minute. And then in conjunction with Excellence in Laundry, a few years ago, we started a women's laundry network initiative for women that are in the industry. And so we start off on May 5th with a full day event for women in laundry. And again, it is a full day of education with some speakers. We have a networking reception. So for women in the industry, we find it's just a good way to connect with other women in the laundry industry. So again, this link has more information. If you are, and it isn't exclusively for women. So gentlemen on here, you are welcome. However, I will be transparent that it is mostly women who attend. If you do decide to attend both, we do offer a bundled package that gives a little bit of a discounted price on both. All right. So that brings us to the end. Let me check just to make sure that
has a question about free dry. So yeah, I can touch on that. Generally, the way I've seen it done requires some type of loyalty element, whether it be with a card or app or QR code. But generally what customers will do is, by using a washer, they'll assign basically a credit value based on the size of the washer. So if I use that, I might get $2 in credits towards my future dries. So it's basically transferring a free dry credit to the loyalty account, whether it be through their phone or through the card. And that's ensuring that the people that are taking advantage of free dry have used the washer. And then if someone just wants to come in and use a dryer, they would just pay the normal price for it. I don't believe there's really a way to do it with like paying directly with debit or credit at the machine, because you can't transfer credits to that. So generally, as long as there's a loyalty account, you can set up the readers to disperse a dryer credit based off usage at the washer.
Okay. Good question. All right. It looks like no more questions. So thank you so much, Eric and Sense, for sponsoring and presenting today's webinar. Again, very informative. For any of you who may have joined a little late, I did mention at the beginning that the webinar was recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and rewatch, or if you didn't get a chance to see it all, it will be available there. And I thank everyone for attending and spending a little bit of your afternoon with us and hope to see you at one of our upcoming CLA events. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. See you later.